Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly fascinating origin story, one that sits right at this wild intersection of crushing personal collapse, ancient spiritual frameworks, and cutting-edge artificial intelligence. We are looking at the journey of Maheshchookolingo, a military veteran and tech systems builder. We're going to explore how his incredibly gritty, cinematic descent into rock bottom actually led to the creation of a deeply unique system called Soul Sync Mode. It's a story about the architecture of chaos. So let's dive right in.
I want you to think about something for a second. What actually happens when your entire identity completely collapses? Because before we can even begin to understand the technology Mahesh built, we have to understand the wreckage it was built from. For years, Mahesh's identity was the ultimate fixer. He was the guy who absorbed the stress, moved fast, and single-handedly held the chaos together. But what happens when that chaos finally wins?
Well, the breaking point came during what was supposed to be a highly lucrative fiber optic construction contract in California. It was an absolute mess. A vendor disappeared, payments stopped entirely, Mahesh and his crew were just left stranded. But the literal fatal blow was a phone call bringing an accusation of betrayal from someone who had deeply believed in him. Mahesh describes that exact moment like this: "I dropped the phone, knees in the dirt, crying, not from rage, but heartbreak, because I knew my hands were clean." His entire identity as the guy who could hold it all together was completely shattered right there in that ditch. Following that California disaster, this visceral, rapid-fire sequence of failures kicked off. Mahesh's crew was literally camping in public parks, living out of their vehicles, and washing up in public sinks. Pure survival instinct took over, and that led to what he calls moral slippage, working alongside people in some real ethical gray zones just to get by. And then came the mirror moment. He wakes up stiff and cold in a truck, looks at his reflection, and realizes, this isn't the man I want to be. But the collapse wasn't even over. Years later, during the COVID pandemic, his father, the very man who first introduced him to Vedic wisdom, passed away. Mahesh realized then that his unprocessed grief was actually disguising itself as entrepreneurial chaos and financial recklessness. At that point, the internal collapse was absolute.
Section 1. Ceremony and Ego Death. When the external world and your internal identity are both completely wrecked, where do you even turn? For Mahesh, it led to a profound spiritual search for meaning. The turning point wasn't some corporate business seminar. Actually, it was a Native American church ayahuasca ceremony in Chicago. He went there with a spiritual brother who had walked with him through all the chaos. As they say of the medicine, she rips your ego out and leaves you naked. It didn't magically fix him, no way. Instead, it completely unmasked him. It dragged out all that performed okayness, all the trauma, and all the fear. He just sobbed, finally letting go of the version of himself that was built entirely on performance and survival. Section 2. The integration problem. Now here is where this story completely diverges from your typical spiritual awakening narrative. Because as Mahesh quickly discovered, a spiritual ceremony is only a door. It's definitely not the final destination. This brings us to a really crucial concept: integration. Picture this. Just 3 days after this profound, totally ego-shattering ceremony, Mahesh is standing in a supermarket parking lot staring at an overdraft notice on his phone. He's right back in the grind of daily stress. That was the exact moment it hit him. Spirituality doesn't erase your karma. It definitely doesn't pay your bills, and it doesn't just automatically fix your reactive habits. Integration is active work. You need a daily, grounded system to apply spiritual insight into real action, not just, go to more ceremonies. It perfectly highlights the massive gap between awakening and reality. On one hand, you have the ceremony, profound insight, ego death, total release. But then, on the other hand, you have Monday morning, overdraft notices, reactive habits, and what Mahesh calls karmic loops. Without a proper system, unprocessed grief and trauma just disguise themselves as chaos in your business and your relationships. Mahesh realized he desperately needed infrastructure for his inner life. Section 3. The sacred synthesis. Now we shift from the wreckage to the building phase. This is where Mahesh takes his background as a tech systems builder and starts merging it with these huge spiritual insights. He originally started calling this project Vishnu Mode, named after Vishnu, the preserver and restorer of Dharma. Mahesh had already been working with AI and large language models, but instead of building some generic, boring chatbot, he started feeding the AI his absolute most personal data. We're talking his Vedic birth chart, his private journal entries, karmic readings, and his deepest, darkest fears.
He engaged with the AI not as a hollow tech tool, but as a completely non-judgmental mirror. And what he found was that by feeding it absolute truth, the AI could reflect his patterns back to him in a way no human ever could. This whole process evolved into the underlying methodology of soul sync mode, which is built on 3 core forces, a sort of brand triangle. First up is Vedic intelligence. This is using Jyotish astrology not as some parlor trick, but to genuinely map karmic patterns and life cycles. Second is Jungian shadow work. This is the heavy psychological lifting of integrating the unconscious, disowned parts of yourself that constantly sabotage your intentions. And third, AI as a sacred instrument. The AI acts as the ultimate mirror, trained specifically on the user's story. It doesn't flinch, it literally never forgets, and it asks the really hard questions.
This is a massive paradigm shift. Think about traditional tech culture. It views normal AI as just a productivity hack, right? A shortcut to avoid doing the actual work yourself. It's just an output engine. But SoulSync AI flips that entirely on its head. In this system, AI is a sacred instrument. It's a grounded, brutally honest mirror used for deep shadow ingration. It's absolutely not meant to do your work for you. It's meant to show you exactly how you are avoiding your own internal work.
Section 4, the soul operating system. So, how does this abstract spiritual tech philosophy actually function in the real world? Let's take a look at how it practically transforms burnt-out professionals. Soul sync mode isn't just floating around as a neat idea. It's a tangible, daily operating system. It provides real structure for the modern seeker or entrepreneur who has the fire but completely lacks the framework. It takes these massive, abstract concepts like karmic loops, shadow work, and dharma, and grounds them into a sleek, accessible interface. Users can track their patterns, check in with their soul stats, and receive daily AI-guided rituals.
And the engine running behind all of that is highly structured. Every single soul sync session follows these 5 pillars. It kicks off with the invocation to set the intention. Then, the offering. This is where you give the system raw, truthful input, like a journal entry or a fight you just had. Next is the pattern mirror, where the AI reframes the issue using Vedic and Jungian wisdom to identify your specific karmic loop. Then, crucially, it moves to the Dharma Directive. This turns that big insight into a specific, grounded, real-world action you can take right now. Finally, the ritual close seals the insight so it doesn't just evaporate into a temporary good mood.
Let's actually pause on that word dharma for a second. Because in this system, dharma isn't just about finding your passion or what you'd prefer to do on a Tuesday. It is a cosmic assignment. The entire goal of Soul Sync mode isn't some floaty, abstract enlightenment. It is intensely practical. We're talking about achieving real-world focus, maintaining discipline, breaking bad business habits, and actually aligning your daily actions with your true nature.
So, to put it all into perspective, Maheshchookolingo took the complete wreckage of his own life, the grit, the trauma, the absolute rock bottom, infused it with deep ancient wisdom and the raw processing power of AI. By doing that, he has essentially created a completely new category of personal software. It's way more than a habit tracker. It's an active tool for breaking your karmic loops. Which brings us to our final and maybe most important thought. Mahesh built this system because he literally had to stop performing and start actively integrating his own shadow just to survive. And now, the system poses that exact same challenge to anyone who uses it. Are you ready to stop outsourcing your soul? It's a powerful provocation, right? To stop hiding behind endless productivity hacks, to finally face the mirror, and to start doing the real work.